Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the IESF MLBB Women's final day here in the Asian Regional Qualifiers, as we are getting to the final matches in this particular group and the final match of the group stage for our second match of the day. We will be spearheading it with Vietnam once again, going head to head against the Titans, the championship tournament favorites here in the Philippines. Arashi, we're back again on the English broadcast, as with me, Eterna, alongside with Arashi. And here is our next match of the day.
Vietnam against Philippines, and just earlier on we were seeing how Vietnam, they had potential. They were doing great things in their match against Myanmar, but unfortunately they were just unable to close it out when it comes down to it, right? So they know how to get an advantage. It's just maintaining it that seems a bit too difficult. So now against Philippines, a team that has been talked up to be one of the favorites, to be doing really, really well. They're a very strong team. I think Vietnam has a huge hurdle to try and get over, and they have to do so while recovering from a 2-0 sweep against Myanmar earlier. So they're definitely working against the flow of the tides here.
There was definitely glimmers of brilliance coming in from Vietnam, with them being able to lead game number 2 against Myanmar earlier on, but they weren't able to close it out, right? That discipline kind of lacked, and that's something that they do need to work on. As we took a look at their official team lineup, we have Sa Daisy, Kao Dinner, as well as Sheromi once again. So still the main five. We're not going to see any changes towards the roster, and of course we're going to be expecting nightmares coming in from regions all across the world, thinking about Shaz Kagura and whether or not the Philippines have done their homework, and whether or not the Philippines would like to go for a respect ban towards this Kagura, especially if they get red side.
I mean, it seems like earlier on, Myanmar at least were like, okay, we can let it go, we'll be fine. But now up against their opponents here, the roster of the Philippines, right? That's where we have to figure out what is going to happen right here, right? What kind of approach are they going to do against a team that has very clearly a strong signature pick in the mid lane?
You have Amores, Perez, Vivero, Alpuerto, and Diagon. And I think one of the main things that we can see from this Filipino lineup, especially for the MLBB Women's, is that they all have the PHI, the Philippines, before that name, right? It really shows their sense of nationality towards their country and their region. And so far, they have been doing great as a main five. If you guys aren't familiar, this is a very similar lineup towards Smart Omega Empress, who were able to get third place, if I'm not mistaken, fourth place. In their previous tournament, the most recent tournament in SPS, right behind the Indonesian region. So they were strong contenders. They were great, right? They knew the fundamentals. They understood a lot of the meta that was shaping back then. But the question is whether or not they've actually adjusted towards this new meta. But I mean, taking a look at their history, they've won every single match, not losing a single game or match currently. So they are number 1 in the standings with 9 points. And if Vietnam go for a miracle play against this region, against Philippines, they will be able to tie themselves back with Myanmar and Malaysia. But Myanmar and Malaysia, they still have one more match ahead of them. So I think either way, this shouldn't really play to the results of Vietnam, Arashi. Am I calculating this correctly?
Trying to think about it myself, but I've always been bad with numbers, man. So I mean, if you're actually curious about it, you can go to iesf.gg and do some calculations on your own. But for sure, I think what the result of this match will definitely play a big significant impact in how things kind of shape up. If it's not in the standings, it's also still for the mental state of the players, right? We talked about this very much so, especially when the teams are like really close to each other in skill, right? That small 1 or 2 games can make or break the whole mental game going into it. So I think for both teams, victory is definitely something they really, really want and need, technically, if they want to keep going on strong and carry that momentum over to the next stage.
And right now, if we take a look at Group 2 or Group B in the Southeast Asia region for the MLBB Women's, it's Indonesia and Cambodia currently at number 1. So it looks like both of these teams, both of these regions should be the ones to push through into the playoffs, Indonesia and Cambodia. Meanwhile, for Group A or Group number 1, we are still waiting confirmation as to the match later on between Myanmar and Malaysia to see who will be moving forward, because I think it's a sure win for Philippines. It's a sure slot in for Philippines into the playoffs, but that second slot for Group A and Group 1 will be very telling, especially after these next few matches. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you supporters of the Philippines here in our next match, or are you behind Vietnam? You can tell what you think and who you guys are supporting in the live chat in the comments, because Arashi is reading and he will call out one person at the end of this broadcast.
What? Am I? It's my first time hearing about this, Eterna.
You said that in the break.
Man, I'm being put on the spot by Eterna as usual. But man, I think that I want to see this Kagura kind of work out, man. Because I think a lot of people will be saying, man, the Kagura was great. Sao was able to get multiple kills. But see, they keep losing, That's why the Kagura just can't work. It's just not in the meta. I want to see it work, right? So that there'll be an argument for this Kagura actually coming back into the meta. Because I think it's a fun pick. It has a lot of potential. Great moments like we saw earlier with the switch of room with the umbrella. And that's definitely not because I'm a Filipino hater. So stop typing that in chat. That is not the case.
What? Is that what's happening in chat, ladies and gentlemen? Please do update me. But, other than the Kubugura pick, what are the other things that we kind of noticed from that particular game, right? We saw the Fredrin coming back to success, but it felt like the Baxia had a little bit more control over these neutral objectives, right?
I think so. With the speed, right, with the clear speed and movement speed, we're seeing that rotations and mobility is definitely something that's so important right now. We talked about this before, even before the item changes, where a lot of the heroes right now, you just simply can't tank. Right? The Natan we saw in the previous game, the carry as well. Whoever stands there and takes that beating will get taken out, no matter what items you go for. Right? You're delaying the inevitable by at most, I guess, 2 or 3 seconds. So a lot of the solutions right there, it's all about mobility. Right? That's why the Fredrin becomes so important, because you can go in, you can tank some damage, you can get sustain even, and then you can dash out and then wait for the spells to come back up, and then that back and forth seems to be something that's so important, which is why we saw even when Myanmar was on the back foot earlier, the fact that they have that Yeve so that when they are chasing, they can catch up, and when they are moving backwards, they can also still stave off the aggression. Now it seems like the meta is really revolving around these slows and utilities, and also how far your team can kind of like dash and go in, which is why we're seeing a lot of these, especially in the gold lane, there's all these high mobility heroes like the carry, like the Natan. You need some kind of dash, because the moment you're on a hero with no dashes, you're so vulnerable. But you also can't really follow up on your team when they are making that decisive play that can make or break the game.
You spoke about mobility earlier on, Arashi, and it's a fun fact that the jungler, Keishi, right, Smart Omega Empress, she's been known to pick up these assassins. So earlier on in our first match of the day, we saw a lot of fighter-heavy, tank-heavy utility junglers, but I'm expecting the Lings, the Nolans, even the Alpha we actually saw from her back at SPS actually come through. So that's definitely something that we do still need to keep an eye out for, especially with how good the Angela has been doing, right? Imagine the Angela paired in with the Ling. It's a combination that we've known and hated and kind of loved to hate for so many seasons ago. And it's coming back to life. It's coming back to light with how this meta has really adjusted and kind of paved the way for the assassins to come back in the jungle. So Ling Angela is definitely something that Vietnam really needs to be wary of, because I'm not sure, like, does a jungler from Vietnam not like assassins? Is her style utility?
Well, going with the previous play style, at least, it doesn't seem like she's that aggressively oriented. Of course, that's just one game we're going off of here. At least I'm doing that. So we'll have to see. The Ling Angela, like you're mentioning, has been a devastating combo. And technically, there's a play in the drafting phase where you pick up the Angela and then you force your opponent into a Ling pick without the Angela. Because otherwise, you're going to be forced to deal with a Ling Angela. But if you go and pick the Ling so early on, then the team that picked the Angela first, that kind of forces that Ling on you, can now adjust, can now look for these picks that can be such a nuisance to the Ling. So that is a play that's been always utilized by a lot of coaches. We'll have to see with the potential for assassins coming back if it becomes more regularly, if it shows up more regularly as far as the games go.
What do you think about blue side and red side, Arashi, so far, right? Because I think over the course of a lot of tournaments, we've always been talking about this. It's also one of the main things that have become one of the keys to success for a lot of these teams. Do you still think, coming into ISF, with everything that you've seen from these matches, that blue side and red side play a factor into the success of some of these teams and regions?
I think it does, in a sense that it's still the same idea. If you go for the first pick, then your opponents can kind of can be forced to respect ban you, but also deal with prio bans. I think the difference right now is, like, unlike previously where, let's say, the Harith is almost like a guaranteed win, right, with how strong he was. A lot of these heroes have been tuned down already, and there's a shakeup in the meta as well with the change in the items. So technically, the meta hasn't settled enough so that there is a guaranteed must ban or pick just yet. And that's what you're seeing now. A lot of these bans are just really quite different, quite flexible. And in fact, the first pick, Vietnam, is the one banning away the Harith. So I feel like now it's a bit more situational, especially if you yourself have a player that warrants such a respect. Like Vietnam with the Kagura, first pick here forces the Philippines to spend one ban already. So I think that's something that teams can use, but it's definitely no longer as one-sided as it used to be.
So we'll see how this turns out, okay, as we enter the drafts, because like you mentioned, right, these bans are definitely something that we don't see quite often. We usually see the Luo Yis, the Chips. I think earlier on, we did get an Angela. We are going to see an Angela again, Novari and Roger. So with the Minotaur being banned out here by the Philippines, what's going to be the first pick for Vietnam, right? Because they have a plethora of choices, Chip, Luo Yi, and the Roger. I think those three would be my personal priority. And they go for the Luo Yi here. So that actually leaves open a very flexible and high priority pick like the Roger for the Philippines to pick up for themselves.
Definitely a great option they can go for. Or they can try and match the global presence with the Chip. But we've seen now that global presence is no longer an all-in solution, right? When you are not used to it, it's difficult. But now you really need to be that much more crafty, that much more unexpected on these global heroes to really gain full value out of it. For the Philippines, they went straight with the Mathilda. It's definitely still a very strong roamer that is flexible too. You can pick it up early on not because it can be flexed out, but it's because you can fit it into a defensive composition, but also an aggressive composition. If they want to go for invades, the Guiding Wind and the Wisp in the early game is definitely a big problem. If you want to go defensive, same, the Guiding Wind can be used. And in fact, we saw that the Guiding Wind was used to help out, I forgot whose match it was, but we saw like a Mathilda Baxia combo where the Mathilda was used to help the Baxia move even faster across the map. That is still something that can be utilized, but Vietnam goes for this Yuzong that we haven't seen, at least in the previous match, always been banned out.
Very high priority, right? It's always just been the Terizla and the Yuzong in the EXP lane. It's always that. So the fact that the Yuzong has been left open, it does signal that it is a high priority pick to be placed in the EXP lane. Because again, right, if we're talking about the Yuzong, he also has a plethora of strategies that can be utilized within the Terizla, right? Really great for team fight, really good in lane as well. If you want to go and zone out these members in the backline like the Novaria, it's also a great pick. And it looks like Vietnam gonna pair this up with a Florin, so even more sustain coming through. And I think the one thing that we really need to note about the Luo Yi earlier on that we kind of forgot to mention is the fact that Luo Yi had a change into her kit, right? The reason why she hasn't been picked up quite often lately is the fact that her cooldown on her ultimate has been increased by like 1 minute, right? Mm-hmm. So the way that she utilizes the diversion plays, it has to be a lot more thought in because she can't just spam that ability anymore. So that macro heavy style of the Luo Yi really depends on the decision making and really great timing with the diversion play. But right, in the jungle, we are gonna have a Ling. We were talking about this earlier on, and it was something that was quite surprising, because for the past few matches that I've been casting for the male scene, we've been seeing a lot of these assassins, the Nolans, the Ling, really finding so much success. And now Philippines with Keishi in the jungle, her name is Al Puerto, I think, in this tournament. She's gonna be able to pick up that Ling.
The Ling with the Mathilda, I mean, we've seen it being used. That makes the Ling so much more mobile. Like, you thought that the Ling was already mobile with the Finch Poise. Now with the Guiding Wind, that's an extra way to escape or chase. So I think it's a great flexible style still. Right now, we still have no idea if it's going to be a full-on collision style from the Philippines, or is it going to be more long distance. Vietnam, though, certainly is doubling down on a team fight angle here. The Yu Zhong, the Lo Yi is great. The Florin as well almost guarantees that when it comes to sustain, you will have a bit more of an advantage. So for the Philippines, with the Novaria and Mathilda, there's a chance that they can go for like a split push style here. They send the Ling off to do her thing, and then the Mathilda can kind of take away or like save any members jumped on by Vietnam to try and disengage from a lot of the big team fights that can get roped in if Vietnam tries to try and capitalize on the fact that they are a member down. And the Novaria can slow them down and spot them out as well. So it comes down again to the usage of the diversion. With the cooldown increased, it cannot be used to scout any longer. And the timing of when to use it, Eterna, like you said, it's not just when you use it, but the cooldowns to make sure that it's available for the next time you require that kind of global transference.
This is, as you were talking, Arashi, sorry, I was distracted, right? Because Philippines went in for the export ban.
Right.
But Vietnam have picked up the Yu Zhong. So what are they saying here? Are they saying that this Yu Zhong can be placed in a different lane? Jungler Yu Zhong? Gold lane Yu Zhong? Or are they afraid of a export jungle? Is what they're signifying, right? Because very interesting.
Ooh.
With the Yu Zhong being there, with the export being banned up by the Philippines, Vietnam, they pick this up and they go in for the Charizla ban. So it looks like this Barats is going to be placed into the EXP. This is something that they've been known to pick up in the EXP. It's not something that we've seen quite often, especially with how far the Barats has fallen off. But they do need a frontliner. They do need somebody to be able to tank in that damage, and it looks like they are going to go for the Barats. But Natan is their next solution in the gold lane. And the big question is, who is going to be in the jungle? We have the Martis still left open if they want to still go for that kind of similar style. Baxia is also still left open.
And there are a lot of options here, but they're lacking a bit of crowd control, I was thinking. But no, it's going to be a Martis. It seems like they're trying to protect their Natan by being aggressive, by being the ones that are attacking instead. Because we saw in the previous match, when they are in the driver's seat, when they're the ones that are aggressing, they do really, really well. So if they can do so, they can indirectly open up the rest of the map and secure safety for the Natan in their roster. For the Philippines, it's almost like a different approach here. Now seeing the Martis, it's still a very fighter-heavy, front-heavy style. So I think they have to just rely on that poke damage. But with the Florin in the picture, now that it becomes a bit more difficult, right? It almost kind of nullifies the poke that the Novaria can bring out. It's going to be a Roger in the gold lane to be able to just solo pressure this Natan, even if maybe the rest of the team are going to be too busy dealing with the Yu Zhong, with the Lo Yi as well.
There's a lot of emphasis on snowball for both of these teams, right? Like you mentioned, it looked like with the utilization of the Martis in the jungle, they are trying to buy enough time for this Natan to land into that power spike and hopefully look for a snowball, right? That's what they're going for, because the Martis in the jungle severely needs that. He needs to be able to snowball, and if they do go for a snowball, then of course this Natan will be able to get to that power spike a lot quicker. But from the Philippines, we're actually seeing a very similar story, right? I think the only late game hero that we can kind of count on for the Philippines in the late game is probably the Novaria. But other than that, Roger needs to snowball from the early game. Ling can work in towards the late game, but the idea of the Ling, I think, with this current lineup right now is that kill pressure in the early game, right? To kind of pressure in those side lanes, help out those side lanes, and have that ganking capacity with the high mobility that this Ling has. So It's going to be very interesting to see how this actually works out, right? Philippines does want to get a little bit more into the early game, but so does Vietnam.
But I think that there's a difference in how they want to take those fights. I think Vietnam are really looking for those big fights where everyone's involved. Whereas for the Philippines, if they go with the Ling and with the Warcry emblem, and they just use that mobility. If you think about it, right? The Barat is the only member here that is kind of immobile, but they have the Mathilda to try and supplement that. Everyone else, Astral Recall for Novaria, Finch Poise for Ling, and still the Lycan form for the Roger. Everyone is so fast on their feet, they can rotate around, out-rotate the members of Vietnam. And if they go with that setup, Warcry on the Ling and Roger building for burst damage, they can combo that along with a very solid Astrosphere and Star Shatter and just go for pickoffs and avoid the fights altogether. I think the level 4 will be the most deciding moment here in this game.
Let's see. Oh, wait, what? Already first blood in the under 1 minute, ladies and gentlemen, as we get into game number 1 in this best of 3 series. And right, you were talking about that level 4, but even before level 4, we do see the kind of the idea of the composition that the Philippines has brought to the table here for game number 1, with Perez already picking up a kill over onto the Tan in the gold lane.
Ooh, look at that damage coming in from Amores, man. The Philippines are out for blood. I mean, Perez showing that she is hungry, going for dinner immediately, securing that first blood. But you can see the pressure already immediately, right? They're able to shove out so much faster, and they're able to rotate even faster as well. Especially with the Novaria Mathilda combo, that's going to be such a pain for the side laners. Because Novaria can just put down 2 spells and just walk off with Vivero on the Mathilda. And that'll be the end of it. And immediately look at this invade, though. They're looking for a chance to go onto Calcute, that she'll be able to still be doing quite fine right now. But the fact that now the turtle control is in the hands of the Philippines, are they going to try and oblige for a full-on fight, or are they going to maybe take it a bit slow here?
That's the big question, right? Because both of the junglers are actually at level 4, so technically the Martis does still have a little bit more to say in the neutral objective take, especially with his anti-CC, but a diversion play.
Ooh, seems like Amores wasn't expecting the diversion to go through. She will be taken very, very low, but the guiding wind saves her. Terms of Blade being popped by Alpuerto, and she'll be able to take one out. Seasick immune though from Calcute, trying desperately to try and secure something, but the Finch Poise is just too pesky, too difficult. That'll be Diagon taking out one member more. Philippines winning out on every single phase. The mobility advantage, they're using it to its full extent.
It has been insane the way that they were able to control that, right? The fact that they were able to get that neutral objective take, it was a very valiant effort once again from Sa on this Luo Yi to look for that crazy play from the bush, to perhaps look for an advantage in the bush. But at the end of the day, right, the way that the mobility card kind of worked in that particular team fight, they were able to weave in and weave out of the skills coming through from the side of Vietnam, and they were able to capitalize over that play from Vietnam that eventually propelled them to 3 kills in the first 3 minutes. Look at this in the bottom lane. It's a 2v1 situation, but Perez is still gonna go for it. He knows exactly the layer, but here comes the cavalry, here comes the backup.
Circling Eagle under the turret there, just exposing everyone. Perhaps for Amores to land a Star Shatter, but it won't really result in anything. But you saw that Perez in this lane is just doing so well. He's just a lot stronger here, almost winning out 1v2 even. And with the rest of the team close by, Calcute collides with Vivero, but Philippines will be taking it slow for now. They want to make sure that they get the right calculated play.
It looks like that's going to be the case here. Oof. Perez even really understands the limit of this Roger, right? Wants to get in that clear onto the waves before she goes in for the recalls, because she doesn't want to lose out in an already advantageous lane, already a level above of dinner in that gold lane. But it's also important to note that we actually do see one of the new emblems coming through, right, from Sheru. We have the Temporal Rain. Perhaps it will help her in the spammability of how she utilizes it, especially they do want to spam as much ultimates as possible. Here comes the Circling Eagle.
Calcute gets jumped on. Diagon trying to help out in that effort as well. But the Philippines just setting up a wall right here, putting Diagon in between them and the opposing roster. Daytona's Welcome though lands down to Calcute, but she will still be able to get out with a Moral Coil. The chase though comes down, and she will surely fall here, get taken out. That is the aggression we were talking about. Man, The Philippines, what can they not do here? They have all the control. They're just going in and out. And Vietnam were going with a very creative approach. You said it, Tuna. They had a temporal rain. They had Natan on the war cry, by the way, which might have contributed to how that lane is going right now, because it doesn't give you a lot of sustainability like the quantum charge or the other more defensive emblems like the weakness finder that a lot of Natans try and use to try and stave off aggression coming in from that Roger.
For sure. And the creativity and all that aggression coming through from the Philippines as well. I mean, even the system can't handle it, Arashi. And they're forced to look at our faces. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry, right? There's too much violence going on that we kind of have to go for censor. No, Arashi, violence is not okay. And that's what we're looking at, right? Because the Philippines have been so great at controlling the objectives. They've been so great at controlling and understanding the limits of their individual roles and individual heroes, that the kill pressure is there, but not so much as they're making mistakes, right? I think that's one of the main things that we saw kind of lack from Vietnam in the earlier match that they had against Myanmar, right? They had the kill pressure. They were very aggressive, but sometimes a little bit too aggressive. And so their positioning becomes off, their initiation kind of becomes off, and that eventually allows the opponent to kind of take over from then and there. But that's not what we're seeing from the Philippines at all. I mean, it's a wonder, right? Why in that interview, Myanmar Luna, she was like, yeah, one of our biggest competitors right now, one of the hardest teams to beat at the moment is Philippines. And that's not the first time that a region has mentioned Philippines. I think in the African qualifiers as well, a lot of people have actually looked forward as they answer in their interviews to go head to head against Philippines. But here we are back in the game after the violence that is coming through. But it looks like Vietnam have picked up 3 kills for themselves onto Diagon, Fifero, as well as Amores. I wonder what happened earlier on.
Maybe we'll see a replay later, but only time will tell. What is significant, though, is both teams have lost the turrets on the top and bottom side. Look at Amores, though, getting jumped on immediately. That is the Lo Yi burst damage pressure. But she'll still be sticking around here. Daisy is in the area with the Black Dragon form, but that will be the turtle picked up by Puerto immediately. Daytona's welcome, used to try and go for a pickup. That will seal the deal for Daisy once more, the frontliner. And this aggressive style for Vietnam really seems to cost them when it comes to staying power in the middle of a fight, especially because Calcute on the Martis is also with a killing spree. They are really banking on being able to go aggressive.
Just a casual dinosaur mukbanging on a dragon, but it looks like a diversion play towards the bottom lane. I don't think they understand what's happening here. Let's see the clash come forward, but really, really great read, really great disengage. Meanwhile, in the top lane though,
Tempest of Blades, Alpuerto with a very easy pickup, a very vulnerable dinner, quite literally taken out by Alpuerto and going straight for the turrets immediately. This is that split pressure we're talking about. Vietnam has some prowess when it comes to a full-on 5v5, but 1v1, there's so many more ways for the Philippines to try and maintain this pressure.
I wonder what the itemization for the Ling is, right? Did he go straight for Sky Piercer? Or did she go for a different kind of strategy here, but diversion play once again towards his mid lane? Does Perez know that she's there?
Ooh, the passive triggers onto Perez, but that's a circling eagle used by Vivera to scout and disengage. That'll be it. That'll be the diversion play completely neutralized. And for Vietnam, they're just not having enough tools right here. Even if they do set up for a great diversion play, who is supposed to start off the sequence of events? Who is gonna lock down the members from the Philippines? If it's gonna be Shieru with the stun seed, I think it's just a bit too difficult and it doesn't really last long enough.
Now we're gonna take a look at the items earlier on. So for the Ling, okay, already ramping up in those items, right? But diversion play again.
Oh, they go into the top side right here, where Daisy still gets low, but she's flying out on the Black Dragon form. The Philippines can very easily chase her down. Amores definitely looking for a chance to try and get something more. But that'll be the Vietnamese backing away.
Whoa, Dinner.
Dinner going in with the entropy, but won't be able to find Amores at all. The cover, the sustainability. And look at the moves, right? Philippines having control over the Lord pit, immediately go for it. And Vietnam are powerless. They have the global pressure, but they're getting out-rotated.
So the question is whether or not they're going to be able to buy time for this Natan to come online, right? Because at this moment, with Alpuerto with the Ling picking up the Sky Piercer, no deaths so far. So she's going to be able to capitalize over that item severely. But that base damage from Sa is still there and still needs to be respected. Actually forces the Novaria, forces Amores to go in for a recall as another diversion play is coming to the mix here.
Wait a minute, what a read there from Perez. She was gonna walk down too. Wait, I might have spoken too soon though. But with the diversion play, they go on Diagon instead. But that's a tanky member. Daytona's welcome. It's used onto Daisy. And she gets out with the guiding wind still. Perez kiting back away, but Sa with the aggressive flicker. Now helped out by Daisy. But the guiding wind once more becomes a thorn in their side. And in the back line, that is Alpuerto going in, taking out dinner just like that. And it's not over yet. Perez coming through to try and participate. And that's Kao Kiteka. Powerless. And with the Lord in Tao, a 6v5, they go for Daisy as the waves still push on the top side. The Philippines give nothing back to Vietnam. And they might just go for the end right here.
Wiped out, ladies and gentlemen, in the 11th minute of the game. And with no members standing, with 7 seconds left on the clock, dinner is going to be spawning real soon. Can she defend from the inevitable? Can she defend from this siege coming in from the Philippines?
Doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. They all try and scramble to try and get the Philippines roster off their crystal, but it won't be enough. They were just too far ahead, almost at a 10k gold lead. The Philippines, man, this is why people have been hyping them up. We just saw respect given to them earlier, and you're seeing just a different level of just macro and mechanics.
It was crazy, right? Because throughout this tournament, even from the African qualifiers, Mirko as well as Naisu came into a little bit of a heated discussion because after the interview that they made, I forgot with what region, but she mentioned that one of the biggest regions that she really wanted to face was the Philippines, right? Being one of the main contenders to win IESF this year for the MLBB women's. And then Raisa was like smiling and stuff like that, and then Mirko's like, what?
Like
because
that?
I mean, technically so far, yeah, exactly like that. Because technically so far in the women's scene, Indonesia has been dominating, especially with Bigatron Era and now Team Vitality. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of these regions are actually anticipating and viewing the Philippines as one of the strongest regions in the MLBB women's scene as well. And it really just goes to show how far this region has really improved with their gameplay, because that was completely a dominant win. It was a one-sided victory for the Philippines. 11 minutes, Arashi. That was the first Lord, and they were able to go for a wiped out and eventually go for the end. But we're going to take a look at the highlights now for game number 1 in this best of 3 series, with Vietnam going head to head against Philippines. And we got to see that beauty again, Arashi.
I mean, they were just solid in their game plan overall, right? The fact that they have this Barat's pick that we were kind of questioning, but using it in the XP lane is a whole different deal. The fact that they have a assassin jungler means that they can just put Diagon right there in the choke point, and that big dino will just block the access point for everyone involved. And the fact that the Daytona's welcome is used so early, so aggressively, that sometimes Daisy doesn't even get to use a Black Dragon form, that's definitely a big factor in how they want to play it. And we talked about the mobility difference. The fact that the Barats can just tank so much damage and then slide out into safety with the guiding wind. It's something we already talked about, but we have to re-mention again, because Vietnam, there were some moments right here where it seems like they were gonna get something in return, but it just gets completely denied.
We saw that time and time again, right? And there was like so many moments where they were trying to make it happen. And again, we're seeing the exact same kind of gameplay from Sa. So we know her a little bit better, right? Whether she be on the Kagura, whether she be on something like the Luo Yi, she is extremely aggressive. There are moments where she even flickered into these team fights to get that final kill over on to Perez on the Roger. It was kind of difficult for her to finally go for the execution because of maybe the lack of damage in the later stage of the game as this game progressed, but we saw moments of brilliance coming in from Sa, and she still was able to perform on a different hero on this Luo Yi. But the cover from Fifero was exceptional. The cover from Diagon was exceptional. Alpuerto coming into the last and final moments to go in for the final HP to get into those kills was also great. The cover as well from Amores, the poke, and as well as the executions coming in from Perez. They were just so great with coalescing each other's play style. It feels like they have it in terms of synergy and chemistry. And this is a very big team and a top contender again with the gameplay that we saw. It was so clean, Arashi. We have to take a look at our MVP after this. But what's your prediction here?
Oh man, the MVP? I gotta go with Vivero, I think, because just the pure utility that she was able to provide for the team.
Okay, I think I'm going for Alpuerto on the Ling. So we're gonna
All
see in 3, 2, 1, ladies and gentlemen, who is your MVP? If you guys have any predictions, please let us know in the comments. And okay, 1-0 for Eterna Arashi. Alpuerto, 603 KDA with that damage dealt as well. And I earlier was inquiring about the items, right? And it looks like she went for Endless Battle first into Berserker Fury, then she built the Sky Piercer, which is actually quite interesting, right? Because a lot of these assassins nowadays, after the patch hit, usually go for the gloves first to get that adaptive attack, and then they go for Sky Piercer straight away, and then onto the different items. But here, it's a different story. Arashi will tell you a little bit more about that.
Well, depending on how the game is going, right? The fact that there's just a lot more sustainability, I feel like maybe Alpuerto was thinking that the Sky Piercer can't really be rushed. I believe it wasn't really built third. It might be moved around, but the point is, going with the Endless Battle first just makes you a lot more dynamic because you have an extra chunk of burst damage, you have an extra bit of sustainability, and you also get a bit more mana regeneration. So it's almost like you're a jack of all trades, master of none. But if in the early game, before you know the trajectory of how this game is going to go, that becomes a very valuable tool if you want to delay some of these more aggressive or defensive options that you can go for. And if you look at the stats earlier, Eterna, I think the healing that was done by the Florin was like 30,000 only. You know what I mean? But usually when you see the Florin, it's just a lot of healing again and again, but it just wasn't present there due to how fast, how devastating, how much speed was in the hands of the Philippines. And if you look at the damage dealt, actually, I think the highest, correct me if I'm wrong, it was somewhere about 50k. So by all means, they were doing so much and they were fighting so little. They were just immediately demolishing whoever gets jumped on without letting them getting healed, that the damage dealt overall in this game was actually super low.
So that makes sense, right? The stats from the Ling as well. 30k damage. With everything that we saw, it felt like it was a little bit more than that, right? The main executor of these team fights, and especially with the Haas claws built into her kit as well, she was able to sustain so much longer in these team fights when they go in for that 5v5. But again, it was such a well done game for Philippines. What can we expect? Can Vietnam really come back from that loss? 11 minutes, Arashi. That was a very short game for the comparison to the games that we've been seeing that have actually held up to the 20th minute. This is half that time. 11 minutes.
I think they have to really recognize and respect the fact that the Filipinos are just really good at this macro style. Whether or not they play it slow, when I say macro style, like the slow macro style or the fast macro style. It's not about them not really having the damage. They had damage, but again and again, they weren't allowed to output it properly. So if they really want to try and make sure that they want to go for this early game fight, they want to go for this low Yi global surprise play, they need the right tools, right? They need crowd control, like a suppression, or even if it's not a suppression, something that can last a bit longer to ensure that they don't just slide back out with the guiding wind. If that was, if they were able to do so, then maybe some of these fights can at least go a bit more even. Right? Maybe the Philippines can still have the pressure and they can still have the control to go for the guaranteed retribution, but maybe they're going to be forced to sacrifice one or two members in exchange for that. But the fact that the Philippines were able to just cleanly take it again and again with zero punish, and considering the fact that Vietnam were going for this heavy snowball style, right? We even saw the killing spree, just to remind you, in the hands of Kai on that Mardis. You know, you want to make sure that you can get those kills, like, even though you do have the aggression, because the Philippines, they understand, man. If they know they can't really go for the fight, they will let you take that objective, but they'll make you pay elsewhere, right? That is something that they have to try and understand. If they want to go and match the macro maneuverability, then get some more tools for the diversion. If not, at this point, if you really feel like the 5-man maneuvers are just not doing it for you, then screw it. At this point, there's an argument to be made to go for just strong laners to ensure that you can have that impact. And maybe even if like together you can't really win, if the lanes are winning, then at least you have a better chance at trying to find something.
And I think that's what they were going for with the Yuzong, right? Okay, sure, if we're talking about like tools and crowd control to play with in these team fights, I guess the Yuzong only has Petrify. But I think that was what they were kind of going for. And the fact that they picked up the Yuzong to try and win it in the EXP lane was also very telling as to how they wanted the game to kind of collapse in the early stage of the game, right? But I guess they didn't account for the mobility that, of course, the Philippines had with the Matilda, with the Ling as well. They're able to roam around the map very quickly. They're very quickly to go in for the ganks into those side lanes. So even if you do have a winning lane, it's very difficult to say that you can sustain with that winning lane because of the rotations and the mid-prio that the Philippines had with the Novaria, fast clear. Matilda helps with the fast clear and mobility. And then you also have the Ling with the high mobility and the high kill pressure in the early stage of the game. So this drag team phase again is going to be very interesting. And the fact that the Philippines still respected as well, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the Kagura, it's also a great way to think about the Philippines as still respecting whoever their opponent is, right? Because Myanmar, they completely ignored it. And it was one of the main reasons as to why those games really lasted as long as it did. I think she's one of the main winning conditions, you know, Sa from Vietnam, as compared to Dinner in the gold lane.
I think that's a fair statement, considering, again, like in the games we saw from Vietnam earlier, out of like 12 kills, like 8 or 9 were in her possession. So she is definitely on fire on that Kagura. But now with it being respected, she has to find a different way. And also, I think they require better tools and more respect towards the Philippines as well. Because we saw the Ling picked up relatively fast. And if you look at the composition, who exactly is meant to stop this Ling? You know, are you trying to make Dinner on the Natan 1v1 Alpuerto on the Ling? It doesn't make sense, right? How is that possible? You saw that in that final sequence in the bottom side of the map. It was like the Tempest of Blades AoE, I believe, and then one Defiant Blade into a basic attack, and Natan just went poof, right? So I think if they want to go for the same style, take note, especially when the Philippines have secured an assassin. And now, in the drafting phase, if the Philippines kind of leave their assassin pick, their jungler, for the second phase, I think that's going to put a lot of mental strain on the drafting process of Vietnam, because they have to be very careful in making sure that they have the right tools to try and stop Alpuerto if she gets her hands on yet another high mobility, high damage assassin.
So the question is, what is the answer to the Ling, right? Because I think back in the day, before the changes into the enemy jungle, you know how now under 2 minutes when you go in for the invade, you receive additional damage? Heroes like the Grok, heroes like the Franco has a very big impact to try and shut down the Ling even from the farming pattern. Masha as well, right? One of the answers towards heroes like the Ling. But with that change, what would be the answer? Do you go for suppression? Do you go for heroes like the Franco with a different kind of playstyle just to go in for the sure kill onto the Ling? Or do you go for something like the Kaja to kind of have a combination with the Luo Yi in that first game? What should have been their roamer if you could do something differently?
Something with a quick engage, I would say. Because the Florin, again, you're helping out, but maybe they were just too far behind as well, so we didn't get to see the value of it. But the Florin can help with the healing, but I feel like with their composition, they have to have something to really start fights as well. Kufra comes to mind, and we've seen it earlier in today, and technically that kind of ruins the whole combo from the Ling, right, by denying the dashes. That can be an option, But I think anything that can, if they want to go aggressive, anything that can go for a quick engage that doesn't really rely on the ultimate. I think more importantly for the engage, because if they're only engaging whenever the ultimate is up, I think with that kind of composition, with the Martis, with the Yuzong, I feel like they would want more ways to pressure, to scare away the members from the Philippines. But ladies and gentlemen, into the drafting phase, we go with the Ling, banned away from Vietnam, and they swapped places right here, but the Kagura is still banned away.
Yeah, as you were talking, right? You were talking about one of the solutions. I mean, I asked you about the solutions towards the Ling, and then, Vietnam, they have their own solution, right? Their solution is to just ban it out, make sure that it doesn't even become a factor as we get into the game. And they also respect the Nolan presence. This was also one of the things that I found as a great alternative towards the Ling. It has done quite well so far, the Nolan in the jungler. So despite all the changes coming through, despite people thinking that maybe the Nolan does fall off a little bit after the patch, the Nolan still does considerably well. And the question is, what will they go for now that the Nolan and the Nolan and the Ling has been taken out? Do they go for something like the Lancelot? Something that we haven't seen come through? Hayabusa maybe, if they still want to play the assassins?
Well, the Hayabusa definitely comes to mind, but with the Philippines banning away the Florin, that's an interesting option there. We didn't see the Florin just be a big trouble, becoming a big issue for the Philippines, but they're banning it away straight up still. And Vietnam are the ones banning away the Lo Yi even, so that's an interesting development. But now without the usual, the Angelas and all that, the Philippines can go for the Mathilda if they want. It's still definitely a great option. They can go for the Roger or the Fredrin if they want to be a bit more elusive or a bit more straightforward with their jungle picks.
Roger, please, right? Roger. So high priority, super flex. You can still utilize it. Oh, but the Harith gets picked up, and this was actually one of my main questions from match number 1 that we saw earlier on against from Vietnam against Myanmar, right? The fact that the Harith was completely ignored. It wasn't banned nor picked up, and so we're finally seeing the Harith come back to life here for game number 2 in match number 2. And the thing is, the Harith is and should be going to the gold lane, right? So that does give Vietnam a fighting chance to pick up the Roger later on, maybe in the last part of this first phase.
Certainly a possibility, but for Vietnam, they go with the Fredrin, they go with the Mathilda. So if they do go for that Roger, there's going to be already a solid frontliner that's already shown in the jungle, so it won't be flexed any longer. The fact that they have a Mathilda, though, means that now the foot is on the other shoe, right? Now Vietnam are the ones that can really move around, but for the Philippines, they go straight for that Roger. So theoretically speaking, unless something crazy happens, it is still going to be a jungle Roger, but I feel like in the current meta, you never know, right? And I like to keep the options available, and they bring in the Faramis that, at least in the earlier match between Vietnam and Myanmar, was a ban away and respected quite evenly. So Mathilda against a Faramis right here. Philippines are the ones that are going to be doubling down.
I completely forgot that they can utilize this Roger into the jungle. And so Vietnam, I think, should have done that first, right? Roger Matilda maybe should have been the choice, but an oversight, I would believe, from their part. But now Vietnam, they have a chance to pick up the Valentina if they want to level out the playing field, right? Against the Faramis, you can still use the Nether Realm if you pick up the Valentina with the IMU that is placed in her kit. But, knowing Vietnam, they could go for something completely different. Charizla Yuzong is still available if they want to try and win it out in the EXP lane, but they go for the Claude instead. All right, very interesting.
It certainly is interesting. It's not exactly like the best of matchups against the Harith technically, and I guess they're banking on everyone clumping together for that blazing duet, but they don't really have a lot of setup to try and enable that either, right? If right now we imagine this fight breaking out and Bina just goes in with the blazing duet, Roger damage, Harith damage, Faramis damage, a lot of the heroes right here for the side of the Philippines, they can output their damage like in a snap, right? It's not like DPS. The Harith, gets a Starlium proc along with a with the dash. The Roger as well has an execute. The Ghost Bursters is just one spell. So it's a very risky plan here for the side of Vietnam. Now they're going to be trying to limit the frontline presence here. Even though they have the Nether Realm, they still want something big to try and stay in the front. And ideally, someone that can still also lock down the members so that they do oblige the Philippines in a fight, right? So that they can get full value from that Nether Realm. The Terizla comes to mind, but for the Philippines, they ban away this Valentina, so no chance of a Nether Realm showdown.
Yeah, the fact that they went in for the Claude instead for that last pick in the first phase did give Philippines the opportunity to take away the Valentina. So this isn't going to be an even team fight, right? If they want to go for it. With the fact that the Faramis has already been picked up for the Philippines, unless they want to go for a little bit of sustainability themselves, which they can't because they already picked up the Matilda, and the Florin was also banned away. You mentioned the Terizla earlier, and it will be the ban for Vietnam. So this does give an opportunity for Vietnam to still pick up something like the Yuzong. But again, right, if they go for the Yuzong, once again, they are going to lack setup. And you mentioned that being one of the weaknesses of Vietnam in their first match. So with the Paquito being banned now for the Philippines, they still go for the Yuzong here.
I'm thinking they're planning on going for an X-Borg right here, right? With the low, quote-unquote, low amount of damage available to Vietnam. And the fact that they ban away the Paquito performs really well against the X-Borg because you don't really stick around to get hosed down by the fire. So I'm thinking the Expert would fit in here as well. It can slow everyone down. It's more spammable. But no, they go for this Akai actually. They're trying to match the big ultimate pressure coming in from the Yuzong. If they can go with the Black Dragon form and try and zone you away, then the Philippines now can do the same thing with the Heavy Spin. And the Arlet is the option they go for here. So it's a full-on teamfight composition though. And for Vietnam, it's just looking like something similar with less card control. So it's definitely a scary situation unless they find some way to try and get ahead in a different department.
Diggy.
Whoa.
But they can't, right? It's too tough.
Right.
Lilia is going to be their choice here for Vietnam. And by the way, this is a signature Akai for the Philippines, right? They love the Akai. Murray, or well, in this situation, Vivero, she loves playing the Akai in the roam. I think a very similar thing that we've seen from Keyboy sometimes, right? With the Akai in the roaming position. But yeah, this is signature picks through and through for the Philippines. Meanwhile, Vietnam has a little bit of problems once again with the tools that are given to them. Sure, they do have the Circling Eagle, but it's not a sure wave fire. But maybe they can utilize it to disengage and ultimately go for a longer team fight, especially with the Claude being picked up as well. But from the drafts, what do you think? Who has the better draft?
I think the Philippines have a lot more flexibility, like in game number 1. For Vietnam, they have a good back and forth, in and out. They have mobility and burst damage tools. But considering that Sa has been one of the main the frontiers of their assault here, I think that she can have prio in the mid lane by just abusing the angry glooms. But the thing is, with the Philippines, they've been sending the roamer, right, Vivero, to just stick around in that mid lane, and it kind of denies Sa the wave clear and also the roaming potential. And if she can't really get that, later on she's susceptible to getting left behind in a fight due to the lack of mobility. The guiding wind can solve that issue. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go straight into game number 2.
Match point for the Philippines, ladies and gentlemen, in this best of 3 series. Vietnam desperately looking for a solution to look for a win here if they want to figure a way to make it up into the standings. You can see here in game number 2, okay, a lot of wave clear and a lot of pressure actually from the side of Vietnam with the Matilda and the Lilia. Very great at the early game damage, very great at the poke, and very great with wave clear. And Amores already having a very difficult time in that lane, in the mid lane.
Looking at the jungle clear difference, man, that is the Roger power in the hands of El Puerto. She'll be able to just move around a lot more aggressively. But look at the emblems, man. Sa is going with the lethal ignition instead of the impure rage. So she wants that extra bit of damage in those short trades. But look at this on the bottom side, man. The lane is pushing towards Perez, and now with El Puerto in the region, Chiero will come in to try and allow for some space to be had. Oh, and actually, they'll be able to get that gold buff as well. So for both teams, they're still waiting around. I think the level 4 is definitely a big power spike, but Dinner and Chiero seems to be content just going in aggressively, trying to match the early game pressure.
Another thing that we can notice is the fact that with, Sa, you talked about level 4, but Sa doesn't necessarily need that level 4 to deal out that damage, right? I think that's one of the main advantages of having a Lilia on your team, and she's actually been able to utilize that pressure that she has in the mid lane towards this top side. The Yuzong has been doing a fairly better time, unless this happens, right? Unless the pressure from the other lanes do push forth into the EXP lane as well, because naturally both of these teams do want to have an advantage before they go for the next neutral objective, which is this first turtle of the game. And both junglers are both at level 4, so that 50-50 is going to come through. But technically the Fredrin should have an easy time with the ultimate layering with the retribution damage as well.
Heavy spin though is available now for Vivero. Look to that to make a play. Heavy spin already initiated. And look at the pin down to Kao. Now, Philippines go for the play, but no, it's still gonna be Vietnam who secures it there, unfortunately for them. But now, on the back foot, they use the bulk of their resources to secure the turtle, and the Philippines try and look for compensation. They get 2, and they'll take that. But already a great showing from Vietnam here.
Yeah, Vietnam being able to pick up that neutral objective is definitely a different story as to what we saw from game number 1, because in game number 1, Philippines, they were able to get the neutral objective and they were able to get the better out of the team fights, and that eventually kind of helped them go for that snowball that they were able to get. But meanwhile, another clash here in the top side. Diagon gonna be able to force in that flicker from himself to get out of that situation. But again, Sa,
Pulled back, Vivero looking for the secure on the kill, but it won't be enough damage. That'll be the Philippines pushing Sa out of the lane, but she just walks straight back in. But Vivero now spots the purple buff. There's a chance that they are orchestrating some kind of invasion. But it seems like El Puerto is still gonna be preoccupied. And the top side though, still that 1v1 situation, Daisy against Diagon. That seems like, and such a big trade happening, there's no way for Daisy to really force Diagon into a proper all-in into a fight.
Not just yet. Corrosion Sight now picked up by El Puerto, helping him out in these particular team fights. Now sitting at a 1-0-1. Again, even though the Roger is in the jungle. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are a little bit confused, it is a Roger in the jungle. He does still need to find that snowball, right? Oh, Paris. However,
circling Eagle into the nether realm though. That's gonna be a great save from Amores, but that's a heavy spin also expended right before the neutral objective is up. Vietnam, of that play, they have wasted 2 big ultimates, or at least used up 2 big ultimates, 3 even, from the Philippines. They can go for the play right here, and you can see Daisy already setting up for it, cutting the wave, making her way down. Vietnam might win big here.
That was exceptional cover. What in the world? But Dinner
immediately deleted by El Puerto and Diagon. That is an extra bit of damage. Now without the gold laner, Vietnam still going for it. The Black Dragon Storm already being used, but look at the Kai coming in. Vivero dodging everyone down, knocking them up, and that's the damage coming in from El Puerto, looking for the turtle still, and it will fall into the hands of the Philippines. Final Slash comes through as well, and they are chasing down the members of the of Vietnam all the way under the turret as well. And all that while in the top side, Perez is able to secure the turret.
It's been insane how the Philippines have been playing it all the way from game number 1 in this match, right, against Vietnam. The way that they are able to focus on a certain aspect, but also use that to collapse onto something else. Like, they're very quick. You mentioned about that macro play, and we're seeing it come through yet again here. Under 5 minutes, Philippines has been able to amass a 4K gold lead. Ladies and gentlemen, they're picking up turrets left, right, and center. They're picking up neutral objectives left, right, and center. And they're also picking up the kills left, right, and center. 5 minutes in, 6 minutes in, 6-0. Vietnam has not been able to find a single loophole to what has been given over by Philippines.
Basically almost 1 kill per minute for the side of the Philippines, and now they're going on to Sao once more. Diagon with a huge amount of damage, but now the Black Shoes into her doom though. That will be Perez picking that kill up. The Philippines, again, they're just more united and they're more synergized for Vietnam, they're trying to do their own thing, but they are getting punished slowly but surely as Diagon comes in, forcing out the Purify from dinner, actually.
And that's gonna be a 60-second cooldown, ladies and gentlemen. Not gonna be there for the next neutral objective for sure, unless, of course, Vietnam find a way to... Oh no, Daisy is actually receiving heaps of damage, and she's gonna walk straight into El Puerto.
Ooh, there's a lot of burst damage though. It won't be enough. The Black Dragon gets shot out of the sky by Perez. Vivero though is the trade that they want to look for from Vietnam, but it won't be available. Netherrealm and Heavy Spin. No way you're taking down the Panda. Look at Diago and just still waiting around in the wings, looking for a chance. But look at the threat. Vietnam are forced to respect the potential, the possibility itself for the Philippines to strike back.
And now El Puerto is 3 levels above of Kao right now, and she's actually already utilized her retribution, so there shouldn't be any contest in that neutral objective sense. But what happened there? A clash again in the top side. Luckily that Guiding still is going to be able to go in for the cover. But again, Dinner just picking up the DHS. She needs a little bit more time to get to the items, but look at how aggressive Diagon is playing on the Arlet as well. Such good zoning coming through. And again, the collapse coming through from the Philippines. 1 tower in the top side and another tower at the bottom.
All while El Puerto was still able to steal away the orange buff from Kao Kute. So they're just winning on every single front. And look at this heavy spin though. They're going for Kao Kute. 1v4. No chance, man. Mathilda just nowhere in the vicinity to try and go for the save. Now without the Fredrin, without one of their main frontliners, the Philippines are going to try and go for the turret, and Vietnam, they're going to try and defend, but you can see how carefully they're playing. They don't want to get jumped on, and the Circling Eagle will not be used aggressively there.
Are they trying to beat their own record? Right? 8 minutes has elapsed, ladies and gentlemen, and this is how dominant the Philippines already are. What is that gold lead, Arashi? I can't count. 8, 9, 10, 10k? 10k gold lead now for the Philippines, and now it's looking like they are looking for more. All 3 lanes are still crashing, top, mid, and bot. And it looks like they are going to capitalize over this. 30 seconds left for the Lord though. Let's see the decision that they're going to make.
There's definitely still a healthy amount of wave clear coming out of Sa on that Lilia. That is the advantage that Vietnam has when they're trying to defend. But of course, with the Lord, the sieging tool that the game has generously allowed for the players to use, it might be a different story. Perez takes away the purple as well from Vietnam. So even when they're backing away, they're still making sure that they get full value. With Diagon picking up the blade armor, we saw earlier that she was fully content just standing there 1v3, knowing that she has a tankiness, she has the regeneration as well. If they want to try and focus her down, they'll have to do so with expensive cost. The Philippines making the first move onto the Lord right here, and Vietnam, I don't even think they know that it's being taken. It's just taken just like that, stolen from under their noses, as the Philippines might be looking for another pickoff, but seems like they'll be slowing down, waiting for the Lord play.
The final moment, ladies and gentlemen. The Philippines at match point. Vietnam earlier on with that 0-2 loss against Myanmar. They're looking to make a name for themselves. They're looking to repair what they formerly lost in their previous match here against the Philippines. But they are looking at one of the largest battles that they have faced here at ISF, as the Lord is marching down in the mid side, and it looks like Philippines want to go for the close.
Diagon trying to threaten away, but he's getting bursted down immediately. That's Sa picking up the kill. Netherrealm finally comes through, but they're already 1 man down. They're sitting there trying to battle it out with the help of the Lord, but Sa is just angry, glooming all over the place, forcing a flicker out of Vivero, as Shieru tries to help out, enabling the chase, but it won't be enough. Vietnam, they've pushed the Philippines away. They lost only a base turret, and technically, they've secured somewhat of a win there.
For sure, right? They were able to, trade in for Diagon. They were able to defend it, reduce the damage to as minimal as possible, and they lose the mid-tier turret. The mid base turret, which is one of the best case scenarios that you can have with how far ahead the Philippines is. As we take a look at this instant replay, ladies and gentlemen, of what occurred earlier on in that siege, the Blazing Duet did help and was able to spark in and out of the Netherrealm that came through. But Sa, man, she's an angry beast at this moment. She wants to try and look for a comeback. She's trying to look for opportunities, and she was one of the main reasons that Philippines couldn't close it then and there.
There we go, round 2, the final slash onto Sa with the black shoes with the Purify, gets her out, circling Eagle to try and deter, but the heavy spin pushes Daisy back. Now with the man advantage, the Philippines are trying to go for it. No big dragon to try and deny them. They're going to try and go for the crystal as well, but the DPS from Sa is a bit too much. Might be a bit too risky for them to risk it. So they are still holding on though, staying in the base.
Oh!
Slash, will be another pickoff by Perez, immediately shutting down Shieru. And from there, no minion waves available just yet. And Vietnam, they're just still waiting. The Philippines are sticking around.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to be waiting though for that mid-tier turret to go in and crash into the base. But that's the thing, right? Even in the later stage of the game, as we enter the mid-game here, ladies and gentlemen, 12 minutes in, the Lilia does still have a lot of advantage, right? Really great wave clear, very quick as well. And when these players from the Philippines with a heavier level of HP, and as they're clumping up with one another, that's when the Glooms really find its value, right? She already has the Ice Queen one as well as the glowing one, so it will help them in these sort of engages, especially when they go for the defense.
Sa is basically serving as like the main DPS tool for the team, man. Dinner is just a bit more utility, just going with the Blazing Duet, but we don't see her being relied on to really shred someone down. Sa seems to be the one doing that as much as possible. But look at Vivero, man. Always active, always looking for chances to find more information, to spot someone out. Because with the heavy spin, that's a easy escape for free card.
For sure. But now look at that. Alberto with the Haas Claws. So I guess that's what they're trying to go for, right? A little bit more sustain in these team fights despite being poked in by the DPS. Oh, wait a second. That's a big moment.
Final slash of the Calcute, and now look at heavy spin attempt. It gets cancelled out though, but with another realm, it doesn't even matter. The members of the Philippines go in under the base, no minions, no problem. Now with a wave in the center, they're going straight for the crystal, but Vietnam are trying to stop it. The Lord isn't even in the picture yet. The Blazing Duet gets used, but to no avail. The Philippines with a dominant end to this match.
They reign supreme here once again in their group stage as well, not losing a single game and not losing a single match to all the other teams and regions that have participated here at IESF. It has been an exceptional run for them. So dominant, so clean as well. You can tell that they have put in the practice, they have put in just everything, the persistence, everything, resilience as well, to form that much of chemistry, knowledge, and discipline of the game. Exceptional plays from the Philippines.
You can't help but just praise everything, man. The synergy, the decision making, even in the midst of all that chaos. It seems like they're all on the same page, right? Who are they going for? Are they continuing the assault? Are they falling back? We didn't see a single moment here from the Philippines where it seems like there's a disconnect, right? We never saw like one person go forwards and everyone going back. Everyone, including Diagon, who's essentially on an Arlet that's so confusing, right? She's dashing in and out. She can still keep track of what the team is trying to achieve, and that synergy is lethal, man. It's dangerous.
Let's take a look at that synergy again as we go into the highlights, ladies and gentlemen, for game number 2 in that best of 3, where again, right, Philippines were so dominant. We're gonna get a sneak peek into the highlights real quick, and here it is.
All begins in the early game for sure, but that heavy spin, despite the fact that they had it at their disposal, the Philippines were actually they actually lost that first neutral objective. But at least afterwards, they made sure that Vietnam paid for stealing that away from them. And all along the game, you do see moments like this where, with the better playmaking tools, Vietnam did try and go for those pickoffs, but Amores with the Netherrealm just comes in clutch again and again. And if you look at how these fights are shaping up, Vietnam definitely look a bit more scattered. And for the Philippines, even though they are at threat of being AoE'd to death by Sa, by Dinner as well, they're just very confident staying close to each other, knowing that they have the tools available to cancel out big ultimates and to give them like a second chance right here, either through a heavy spin or through the Netherrealm.
It was already a very different and a very difficult draft to kind of execute though, right, Arashi? Because you were talking so heavily about tools and things that they can utilize in these team fights to kind of stave off that pressure and that aggression coming through from the Philippines, and they didn't really answer that in this game as well, right? With them opting for the Yuzong again with Shieru on the Matilda. It's not as great and as promising as something like the Akai or the Arlet in terms of that tool utility, and we saw that actually happening in a lot of these team fights. There was nothing that Vietnam could actually do with how much damage was already put on towards them in these skirmishes and in these team fights and in this final siege. There was a moment that Sa was able to carry a little bit in this 10th minute of the game to go in for a clean defense, but ultimately with El Puerto racking up with the items, with as well Amores, by the way, also dishing out that magic damage that you don't necessarily see but is coming through, and of course Perez with the burst on the Harith. It was very difficult for Vietnam to look for a proper way to prolong the series, to wait until Dinner gets that power spike.
And this is a big situation that we talked about a lot of. Whenever you have a Faramis or you have a hero that can go for a big combo kind of style of gameplay, having burst damage available to deter and to corral your opponents to group together is definitely something that the Philippines were using here. The fact that if anyone steps out of position, you can expect Vivero to come in with a heavy spin to pick him off. You can expect Diagon to just go at him, and of course, once you're out of position for just a little bit, Perez and El Puerto has so much damage available to just melt someone down completely. So the fact that that was a factor forces everyone to clump up together, and that means more Ghost Bursters damage, and more ways for Diagon to get a big combo with the final slash.
So let's see, ladies and gentlemen, who will be crowned as the player of the match and the player of the game for game number 2, our MVP from the side of the Philippines. Earlier on, we had El Puerto, but for game number 2, drumroll please, Arashi, what are your thoughts? What are your predictions for this time's MVP?
I mean, man, I gotta go with Vivero again. The fact that she can get so much information, play defensive and aggressive throughout the course of this game, I feel like that was what allowed them those big moments. But of course, if it falls to anyone else, I wouldn't be surprised, man. Everyone just performed really well.
Okay, so let's see. Our MVP. Ladies and gentlemen, drum roll, please. Is that a drum roll? Can you hear the drum roll? I hope you can hear the drum roll. But it's El Puerto again. 2 times in a row, back to back. Our MVP, our player of the match, a KDA of 608. So again, she was not picked off again. She was untouched again with a higher damage dealt and a very, very aggressive, by the way, item build. But Arashi, it looks like the Sky Piercer, she sold it. She sold the Sky Piercer for this Brute Force breastplate.
I think she transitioned from more burst damage straight up to a bit more DPS, perhaps fearing or being a bit more concerned about Sa and the damage output, right? Because they can get pickoffs already with the Ghost Bursters, with the damage coming in from Diagon as well. But when it comes to DPS, that was what is usually a bit of a concern, especially when you do have a Roger in the mix, right? So going with this build, it's a great mix of the same things that makes Roger so good. Good damage, good sustainability, good tankiness, and good movement speed. So going with this DPS build technically with a highest clause, and then going with the Brute Force Breastplate, you can do almost the same thing, and you're still relatively durable compared to any other marksman. So you can see that the way she played was also just all in. Even in the base, if you saw it in the highlights, everyone was going on to, what was that? It might be the Yuzong, pinned against the wall by Vivero, and you can see El Puerto just running in, just solo killing someone. So it definitely works, but it depends on the composition and the fact that they're able to adjust not just the playstyle but also the itemization shows again that there are levels to this game and that the Philippines are definitely up there.
For sure. So that actually brings them up to 12 points, Arashi, in the groups. And I think in that earlier match that was happening at the same time as Philippines versus Vietnam, Malaysia versus Myanmar, I think of Malaysia, according to what I'm seeing from the standings on IESF.gg on their official website, Malaysia's at 9 points. So I think it was a 2-0 for Malaysia.
Wow.
Yeah,
Malaysia,
so
man.
exactly. So despite how strong we saw Myanmar earlier on against Vietnam, Malaysia was still able to win out that best of 3 match. And so they are now top 2 in Group A. So it's Philippines with 12 points and it's Malaysia with 9 points. Meanwhile, if we take a little skip into Group B or Group 2, we have Indonesia at 9 points and Cambodia at 6 points. So those are the top 2. So we have Indonesia, Cambodia, Malaysia, as well as the Philippines.
I mean, it's very exciting stuff. A lot of people just have been counting Malaysia out for the longest time, but I'm really enjoying the fact that they're stepping up. I mean, just what was it, 2 days ago, we saw that even in the men's what do you call it, the men's match, Indonesia got defeated by Malaysia, and for a lot of people, they were scoffing at Malaysia, like, oh, what can they do, dude? We got one of the best rosters here for Indonesia, but hey, there you go, man. It's never over till it's over, and we always keep reminding you guys of this. It's not about it's harder to stay on top rather than like get on top. So there's definitely a lot of ways that some of these teams who hasn't really been as dominant to really get a leg up over the quote-unquote tournament favorites.
By the way, Arashi, as you were talking about what happened between Indonesia and Malaysia earlier on, if I'm not mistaken, right, this match is the match that we saw earlier was the last match of the group stage. If I'm not mistaken, if I'm wrong, production, please do let me know. Chat me up. But this should mean that for our playoffs, which is what we're gonna be getting at for our next match, A1 versus B2, I think that means Philippines will be going against Cambodia, and our final match will be Indonesia versus Malaysia for the MLBB Women's. I'm waiting on confirmation right now. Oh, yeah, it's right. The first match will be the Philippines versus Cambodia, followed by the second match, which will be Indonesia versus Malaysia. And both of the winners from each match will straight away qualify for WEC.
Interesting. This
Here we are.
This is the time for Malaysia to go big, man. I'm really happy for them as a region, for sure. They have already beat us when it comes to entertainment so far, So I feel like if they can step up as well in performance, man, it's threatening for us for sure as the Indonesians. But at the same time, when your rivals are performing well, that kind of forces you to get even better as well. That's the whole idea of these international events, right? For you guys to go up against each other and sharpen each other into even more like impressive levels, because steel sharpens steel, but people sharpen people.
Yeah. Ooh, it's gonna be so interesting. And we've been casting for a few days. Arashi, you've actually been hopping in a few of these matches, and we're finally to this point, right? The group stage done and dusted for the MLBB Women's. I think earlier on, it's also the playoffs currently that's going down for the MLBB men's scene as well. So it's the final day of the Asian regional qualifiers, and we're finally getting to see who will be representing into WEC at Riyadh, because it's either going to be Indo or Malaysia, and Philippines or Cambodia.
Definitely intense.
So, Arashi, I love doing this, but can we get your predictions to the next two matches? Philippines and Cambodia. They're all going to be a best of 3, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. So it's still a similar format as to what we've been accustomed to in the group stage. But moving on to the playoffs, Arashi. Philippines and Cambodia.
I think, people, come at me for it, but I gotta say, I'm an analyst, right? I go with numbers, I go with stats, and to me, who's sometimes tactical, boring is good. It's a saying we often hear, right? When things are boring, it's good, it's predictable. I have to say that my professional opinion would be the Philippines when it comes to that matchup, and when it comes to Malaysia and Indonesia, I think Indonesia still got it for sure. And I have sometimes I get a bit of a leak of info coming in from the coaches as well. I happen to know them coincidentally, so I gotta go with that. But if at any moment that expectation is shattered by Cambodia, shattered by Malaysia, I'll be the first person to congratulate them and say that this is what we've been waiting for, right? A huge switch up a huge underdog story, because come on, it gets boring after a while when it just is the same people again and again. So I think whichever way this goes, I'll be a happy person. But my prediction will be for the Philippines and Indonesia, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, right? If we're looking at history, if we're looking at data, if we're looking at statistics, it does seem that the Philippines and the Indonesia should be the ones moving forward to WEC. But hey, we have been surprised by a lot of these regions in the past. And who's to say that this is not going to be something similar of a pattern that we've been seeing on certain times, right? We've been seeing the first of some things, and maybe it's a first upset that we will be seeing today with Cambodia moving forward instead of the Philippines, or even Malaysia moving forward in comparison to Indonesia. Because I think even in the MLBB's men's match, people were already like, this has got to be a sure win for Indonesia, right? With the Onyx roster, an Onyx roster that has been so dominant. Granted, it's not Kyrie in the jungle, it's Albert in the jungle for that full Indonesian roster. But people are still thinking like, no way would they lose. But I guess, Malaysia with the SRG lineup, if I'm not mistaken, right? The fact that they have also gone completely undefeated in their run as well, with how dominant they have also been back in MPL MY. It was a big moment that they were able to win it out in a very dominant fashion as well against Indonesia. And it just, again, reflects how much of these regions have progressed, and it's no longer the typical Indo versus PH kind of storyline that we've been so used to seeing over years and years and years and years. So before we get into that though, as preparation to our first playoff match, we are going to take to an interview, Arashi, with the Philippines. I do believe it's Diagon. I think she's the EXP laner, so we're gonna get a chance to actually talk to her. So let's ring her up. Hello? Are you there?
Hi. You hear me?
Hi, wait a second. Arashi, if you can start the interview, I need to adjust my audio first.
All right, hello. So congratulations on the great performance, man. I think you in particular, Diagon, you're doing great. I mean, as the main front line and also as a utility player. But I gotta ask, in game one, you went with the Barats. In game two, you went with the Arlet. Which is your preferred playstyle? Do you want to be aggressive, getting in there, or are you content just being a big dino, just stomping around the place?
Personally, I prefer the Arlot. I want to be in the going there, going in the clashes and doing damage. But I can also play Barats and any other heroes. It really depends on the team lineup. I can play both. I think I can play well in both play styles.
Okay. I mean, they were definitely a big factor in how your team were able to just get so much control around the place. When you play, do you coordinate how you move forward? Because sometimes it seems like your friends aren't really near to try and back you up, and you just move forward 1v3. What's the story behind that? Do you just feel like at that point you're strong enough and 1v3 won't even matter?
Yeah, at some point I do think that in 1v3 I can sustain it. Not really gonna overextend to the part that I'll die, but in 1v3 I think I can sustain it to the part that they can come and support me. It also depends on the gold lead. My item, if it can do a lot in a 1v3 situation.
All right. Well, Eterna, do you have any another question right here, maybe from your side?
Of course. Hi, Diagon. Congratulations on that victory, by the way. You guys have been doing so great in your groups, right? If I'm not mistaken, you haven't lost a single match in your IESF run. How does it feel to be number one in your group right now?
It feels nice, but I think as well that we shouldn't feel compliant. We shouldn't feel compliant that we're on top one right now, because I know it's not yet the real fight that we need to fight.
Okay, you were talking about the real fight. What is the real fight? If you could tell us.
It's a fight, but I think there are more. There are more obstacles that we need to face, and even though we're performing good now, I really hope that we'll still perform good into the next fights that we'll have. I
I actually want to
I
follow
want
up on
our.
that question.
Oh my.
Okay.
Ooh.
You mentioned obstacles in the future, right? So, what do you think is going to be your biggest obstacle? Is it a particular team, maybe that you guys can mention, or even a particular region that you think is going to be your main competition at ISF?
Well, the main competition would be the typical answer, it's Indo from the stats and all, but I also think that our next matchup is gonna be. I mean, we're not familiar with them that much yet, so we don't know their play style that much, or maybe they're still also one of the obstacles that we need to face. Yeah, aside from the typical answer that you all know already.
For sure. All right. Well, along with that, by the way, Vietnam, they were putting out some really very niche picks, very specific pocket picks, like the Kagura, for instance. Is this something that you
Yeah.
guys have been like picking up on? Did you decide from the beginning, okay, we're up against Vietnam, no Kagura?
Yeah, I respected it. She was good. She was good at it. We respected that.
Okay.
Yep. We saw it was actually great to see that respect coming through. Sorry, we're thinking because like we're having nightmares about the Kagura, and it was great to finally see that the Philippines, a region that has been so dominant in the group stage, still wanted to go for the respect towards that. But now you do still have one match ahead of you, right? You're going head to head against Cambodia. I think you talked a little bit about that matchup, the fact that you don't know much about them, but how confident are you guys at winning that match to secure your spot at WEC Riyadh?
How confident? I guess let's say 70-30. That's the confidence
Okay.
I can give. If our
That's great.
gameplay is if we stay consistent in what we do and no one makes big mistakes, then that's what I can say. 70-30.
That's great. I mean, the fans are loving that, right? They need that layer of confidence. And, other than that, maybe do you have a message to all your supporters from the Philippines? I mean, I'm seeing a lot of them in the live chat and they have been loving what you guys have brought in ISF so far. So maybe the final message to your fans and your supporters.
I hope thank you first for all the support that you give us and for always watching our games, and I hope that no matter what happens you'll still support us, no matter the outcome, no matter the outcome is. That's all, and watch more. We're still not done. You gotta watch more.
All right. Thank you so much. How do you pronounce your name, by the way? Diagon?
And I'm actually confused as well. It can be diagon, like diagonally, or
Okay.
diagon or jagon. I mean, if you watch
Okay.
Harry Potter, you know diagonally. You know that?
Oh! Oh, it comes from that.
We own that. Just kidding.
Oh. Oh. I was like, man, you caught me there for a second. But okay, thank you so much and congratulations. Thank you so much for your time to, have an interview with us. We'll hope to see you and good luck for your next match against Cambodia. Hope we get to see you at WEC. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Good luck. She a troll. I got trolled there.
Diagon Alley.
I was like, really? Like, oh, okay. But again,
Yeah.
congratulations to the Philippines for being able to win that match. I mean, they didn't even really need it, right, to secure their next position. Actually, no, they did. Oh, no. They still would have been, because even if they were tied with Malaysia, the fact that they went undefeated in terms of games, that should have also given them that slot to go to the playoffs. But again, Arashi, did you expect this? Wow.
2-0. I thought that the confusing nature from Vietnam might give them a bit of an edge, maybe make it a bit closer. But I've heard the rumors here about how good the Philippines has been, and they definitely showed it today. And looking at the interview, even you can just feel the confidence right after such a performance. And sometimes you can see that they're kind of still like, okay, still kind of intense. It was kind of a close game, and we gotta stay focused. But you're saying that, they were able to troll you, Eterna. So I mean, gotcha, man.
Got me, bruh. Got me, bruh.
Diagonally.
Dang, that was intense, but that was only the group stage, Arashi. We haven't even moved on to our main part. We haven't even moved on to the playoffs. But by the way, congratulations and nice try to all the regions that didn't make it to the playoffs. We had a total of 9 regions participating. Hang on, I'm gonna bring that up. We had 9, right? So
getting them a shout out.
We had Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, Malaysia, Philippines, Brunei, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Laos. So for those regions, those teams that didn't qualify to make it to the playoffs, you guys are on the right track. With every L, it's not a loss, but it's a learn. And we hope to see more from your region in the coming future, because we've seen a lot of promise, we've seen a lot of potential from these regions, and hope we get to see more and hear more about your region in the upcoming tournaments. So, keep your chin up and your head high. Like that. Thank you, Arashi. But this does point to our next match of the day, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to go to a short break before we head into the playoffs. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned with me and Arashi. We'll see you after the break.